And these are some of the secrets that you've learned over your life, Dr. Dyer, that you're condensing all into one package for us.
Well, they're the most, I think, most people, when you see these kinds of books out there, books about 10 things I wish I knew before I did this and that, and the most important ideas I've ever had, and so on, very often, and if you look at commencement addresses and things like that, very often what they are about is getting ahead of the other guy, setting goals, making yourself more prosperous, listening to your elders, and these kinds of things. But what I've done is I've taken the 10 most important ideas that will give you a deeper and a richer experience of life, a more spiritual sense of your own fulfillment as a human being. And like I say to young people, like one of those was, don't die with your music still in you, and have a mind that's open to everything. This is the kind of thing that will enrich your life, and it's not about setting goals or listening to your elders. I hardly ever listened to my elders throughout my entire life. I can't imagine telling somebody else to go ahead and do that themselves.
Were you a problem child?
I was what I call a scurvy elephant. I talked about it on my tapes. A scurvy elephant is, when I was living in Mount Clemens, Michigan, in an orphanage, I came home from school one day and I asked the lady that ran the place, her name was Mrs. Scarf, I said, "What's a scurvy elephant?" She said, "Well, where did you hear that?" I said, "Well, I heard my third grade teacher, Mrs. Poole, talking to the principal, and she said that Wayne Dyer was a scurvy elephant in her classroom." So she called the principal, and the principal got on the phone and said, no, she didn't call him a scurvy elephant in her classroom. She called him a disturbing element. So I think you have to be a scurvy elephant a little bit in your life in order to fulfill yourself. You can't be doing what other people tell you. You've got to listen to. Shakespeare had a wonderful line. He said, "Go to thy bosom, knock there, and ask your heart what it doth know." That's what you have to do. And sometimes the decisions that you make and the things that you decide are important for you to do, everybody around you isn't going to understand and agree with, but you still have to listen to that inner voice. At any rate, we were going to talk about treating yourself as if you already are what you'd like to become. When you look at some of the greatest and most successful teachers and spiritual leaders and people like that, you discover that they always had a vision. William James once said that if you get a picture of something in your head and you keep that picture there and refuse to let it go away, you eventually will have to act upon it. It's a law in psychology. It will always work. The problem we have with this is that most people don't understand that what they think about is what expands, and they forget that what they think about most of the time is what they can't have or what they don't have or what's missing from their life or how things always were or used to be and so on, and that's where their thoughts are. And if your thoughts are on what always has been or what used to be or what other people expect for you, even if you despise all of that, you'll find that you'll attract that into your life. You see, highly functioning people don't put their thoughts, like their everyday energy, their inner world, even on what is, if they don't like what is. That is, if you don't like the circumstances of your life, if you just simply don't like what's going on, you don't like your relationship, you don't like how much money you're making, you don't like the state of your health, you don't like your addictions, you don't like how much you weigh, whatever it is, and if your thoughts are on what you don't like, even though you despise it, you'll continue to attract it into your life because, it says in the Old Testament, as a man thinketh, so is he. So that, and if your thoughts are on the way things have always been, or if your thoughts are on what others anticipate or expect from you, like what your parents programmed you to be, or what your community thinks you should be, or what your church members think you should be, or whatever. If your thoughts are on things that you despise, don't be surprised if you don't continue to attract more of the things that you despise, because as a man thinketh, so is he. So what do you do? How do you change that? How do you get out of that pattern? What you do is you take your thoughts and you don't keep them on what is, if you don't like what is, or what always has been. You put your thoughts onto what you intend to manifest, what you intend to create for yourself in your life. And when you do this, when you shift your thoughts onto what you intend to create, so that means if you're a person who's overweight, and you'd like to be thinner, if you're a person who has addictions and so on, what you do is you shift your thoughts off of what you don't like. Addictions have been described often as never getting enough of what you despise. You despise what it is that you're addicted to, but you just keep chasing after it because you have to attract what you think in your life. So you put your thoughts on how you intend to look. Now, even or on being pure. Now, even if you're continuing to light up a cigarette, if you would like to quit smoking, you still put your thoughts on, I see myself as a non-smoker. I refuse to think of myself as addicted. I see myself pure, in purified form. I see myself looking the way I would like to look. I get a picture of myself looking the way I would like to look. I put it on my refrigerator. I would like to have a new car in my driveway. I go down to the car dealership. I sit in the car. I have my picture taken in it. I take it for a test drive. I see myself driving the car. I put the picture, even though I don't have the money, I put the picture in front of my office every day. I put it on my computer screen. I see myself driving the car, and eventually you will act upon what you think about. And what you're thinking about is having the car, looking the way you would like to look, being purified, having a great relationship, whatever it is, and you attract that into your life. It's a very simple thing. Beethoven wrote about it in describing how he wrote his music. He would already see himself doing it. I do it when I go to write a book. I already see it completed, and I just allow myself to fulfill that destiny. It's shifting off of thinking about what you can't do, what always has been, what others want for you, and onto what I intend to create, and keeping the thoughts there even if you don't act on them yet. Eventually you will. It's a law of the universe.
I know you said when you get ready to speak to an audience, you already see them being happy and fulfilled and responding. And do you get stage fright at all?
No. I did at one time when I was in high school, and I took a course in public speaking to overcome it at school. I took a speech class, and we had to give a speech every week. And I just overcame my fright and and I found out that I was really quite good at it. And all of my fears were, like they say, I'm an old man and I've had many troubles, most of which have never happened. Most of the things that I was afraid of were things that I created in my own mind. And so what I've done with the speaking thing, I repeat a line from A Course in Miracles just before I'm being introduced to speak. Whatever the introduction is taking place, I always repeat this line. It says, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. So when I go out on stage to speak, I don't think of myself as being out there alone. I think of myself as with God, and that I'm connected to this. And that's one of the secrets in here, in the 10 secrets, is that embrace your divinity. See yourself as a piece of God, as connected to God, as it says in the New Testament. And I am in you, and you are in the Father, and the Father is in you. You are connected to this divinity, and you are not separate from it. And see it as there to guide you, and get your ego out of the way. And your ego is nothing more than your belief that you are what you have, and you are what you do, and you are your reputation, and that you're separate from everybody else, and separate from what you'd like to attract into your life, and even separate from God. Those are the 6 components of the ego. You want to shift all of that around and say, I am the beloved. I am connected to. I have God with me at this time. I have spiritual assistance available to me. I can call upon it. I can negotiate its presence to appear at will in my life. And when you do that, you get rid of things like stage fright. You get rid of things like even failure. So much of the fear that we have in our life is about failing. But the truth is, you don't ever fail at anything. Failing is just a judgment. If I take a golf ball and put it up on the tee and I swing at it and the ball just dribbles off to the side, I haven't failed. I've just produced a result. And the question isn't whether I fail, but what do I do with the results that I produce? And my suggestion is that you take anything that you do out there and say, okay, what result? And if you're 100 pounds overweight right now and you're listening to this program, you haven't failed. You've just produced massive results. To ask yourself, what am I going to do with the results that I have produced in my life? Rather than chastising yourself and finding fault with yourself.
It's difficult to see the vision of yourself as a thin person when every reflection you see is otherwise.
But the reflections that you see are the reflections that are coming from external, outside of yourself. If you start shifting and making your primary emphasis of your life how you intend, and that's a key word, intent, how I intend to look, and seeing myself as an attractive, worthwhile, valuable, important person who is not my body anyway. I'm not a human being here having a spiritual experience. I'm a spiritual being here, having a human experience, and I can use the spirit. Even Jesus said, the flesh counts for nothing. You know, the flesh isn't who you are. It's the spirit that gives life. So go to that spirit within you and recognize that spirit, and then and live from that. That's the way you have to do it.
Let's talk about the sixth secret. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. You indicated in your book that we shouldn't be angry about what happens in the world, that you need to get to a point where nothing offends you.
Well, there's another secret in there also that says there are no justified resentments. That resentments are things that just poison us and make us continue to stay on the path that we're on. The problem with being full of resentment and anger and revenge and so on is that this is something called force. And when you ever use force, you're using an emotion that will always weaken us individually and collectively. And when you use force, you create a counterforce. So if you're let's say you're in a relationship with someone and they spew out a lot of hate and anger, and your response to their hatred and anger is to be angry at the way that they're treating you. What you've done is you've responded to a lower energy with even lower energy, and you've created a much lowered energy field for you to try to resolve a problem with, and you can't do it. You're just creating an energy field of more anger. So that in St. Francis's prayer, what he said, he's the man for whom we named the city of San Francisco. This little monk who lived in the 13th century who said, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. And what he was really suggesting is that you have to bring a higher energy to the presence of a lower energy. And when you bring love to the presence of hatred, it's very similar to when he says, where there is darkness, let me bring light. When you're in a dark room, the energy of darkness is very low. The energy of light is much, much higher. It's a faster frequency. So that when you bring light to the presence of darkness, not only do you nullify and dissolve the darkness, when you light a candle in a dark room, you not only get rid of the darkness, but you convert darkness into light. And that's one of the things that we need to learn to do. It's a metaphor for our lives, is how can we bring love to the presence of hatred and not only get rid of the hatred, but convert it into love. This is what we have to learn to do as a people. Collectively, we still don't see ourselves. What we need an invasion from another world.
Oh.
We need someone to come down to this world and to say to everybody on Earth, we need 10 million of these Earthlings to be used as a food source. And we're going to come back in 2 years and we're going to take 10 million of you back because we're short of food on the planet that we live on. And then they show that they have the superior technology to do that. And then ask the question, what do you think would happen on the Earth over the next 2 years? And we wouldn't have any more Afghans, or we wouldn't have any more Russians, or we wouldn't have any more Palestinians, or we wouldn't have any more Jews or Catholics or whatever. As Kierkegaard said, once you label me, you negate me. We would all be part of humanity. We wouldn't have God Bless America. We'd have God Bless Humanity. Yeah. And all of us would recognize that on a round planet there's no choosing up sides. We all share that which allows us to be human, which is not our bodies and the shape or the color of our bodies and what side of the river we happen to be born on or what country we live in or what religion we were born into. We would recognize that we are all one, that no man is an island, and all of us are interdependent upon each other. But we haven't learned that yet. I heard a story shortly after 9/11 of a grandfather who was talking to his grandson. And his grandfather said to his grandson, he said, I feel like after the events that happened a couple of days ago, he said, I feel as if I have two dogs barking inside of me. And the first dog is filled with anger and hatred and resentment and mostly revenge. And he said to his grandson, he said, the second dog that's inside of me is filled with love and kindness and compassion and mostly forgiveness. And the grandson looked up at his grandfather and said, well, which dog do you think will win, Grandpa? And he responded, whichever one I feed. And we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we are feeding? If we're feeding the part of us that is filled with revenge and hatred and anger and so on, then we'll create more of that in the world. And that's why we have so many wars, and that's why 85% of humanity calibrates at a level that will collectively weaken us.
It sounds
and we
like
have to shift out of that. I'm in the midst of a storm. I don't know if you heard that thunder.
Yes, it sounds like war where you are right now. It's storming in Florida?
Yes, it is, but it almost does every afternoon in the summertime. So what we have to do is look at this whole idea of Einstein's the one that gave us that sixth quote. He said you can't solve any problem with the same mind that created it. Whatever problems you've got going on in your life right now, in your relationships and so on, is a problem that somehow you own and that you have to take responsibility for. And if you can shift out of that and to say to yourself, I created this, then you have to say to us, now what I have to do is to rewrite my agreement with reality. Come up with a different way of processing what the solution might be. Because if I use the same mind, I just create more counterforce to the force that I've been using, and I just create a lowered energy field. So now what I have to do is change my mind and bring something different. Bring compassion, bring peace, bring kindness, bring joy, bring God, bring spirit to the presence of this energy and of this problem, rather, and watch. I will not only nullify it and send it away, but I'll convert it into something that works for me, and that's what we have to do individually in our lives, and mostly that's what we have to do as a people on our planet, is we have to. And when someone said to me, how could we solve the problems of the Middle East, I said, what I think we should do is we should take 1 million people and have 1 million people just go to the West Bank and go and have them all just sit and meditate and just go into a peaceful state. Deepak Chopra and I did we talk about it on a tape series we did a few years ago called Creating Your World the Way You Really Want It to Be. And we did meditations with, and we would measure 7,000 people who were meditating. They would measure their serotonin levels, which is the enzyme in the brain, which indicates whether or not you are at peace. The more serotonin you have, it's what the antidepressants do. They try to accelerate the growth and stimulate the growth of serotonin. So meditation is one of the ways to do that. It stimulates serotonin production. And we found that people after meditating would have increased levels of serotonin in their blood. And then we discovered that when we measured the serotonin levels of people who were in the community, when this many people were meditating, that just by being in the same energy field with somebody else who is meditating, that your serotonin levels increase. And this bodes well, I think, for the kinds of things that I think of as solutions. There was a prison in Senegal not too many years ago that signed a contract with Maharishi to teach transcendental meditation to all of the prisoners, all of the guards, all of the wardens, everybody associated with the prison. And they reduced the acts of violence in the prison, which was terrible before, prisoners on prisoners violence. They reduced it to zero. There was no more of that after a year of this meditation. And they reduced the recidivism rate from 98% down to about 8 or 9%. And within 4 or 5 years, they didn't even have to have the prison anymore. It was just an astonishing change, and it was teaching people how to go within, how to get quiet, how to change their mind, and how to listen. If you take the word silent, S-I-L-E-N-T, and rearrange the letters in there, you'll find that the word listen is in there. Listen has every letter that silent has in it. It's just the same thing, only it's just formed a little different. So if we just stop telling everybody else what ought to be done and just listen. If the Palestinians would listen to the Israelis, if the Israelis would sit and listen to the Palestinians, just listen without any. This is why we're troubled. This is what our problem is, and listen in silence, and then vice versa. We would find the solution is bringing God or Spirit to the presence of all of these things we call problems, and watch how they dissolve.
Dr. Dyer, you were talking about meditation and how that has a profound effect on the outcome of events when done in groups and going into the silence. And this is another one of your secrets, embracing silence. I know for me, meditation has really worked wonders in my life, and everything just seems to fall into place when I do this consistently. Has this been your experience personally?
Yes, it has. That meditation and silence and getting peaceful and getting quiet. Melville once said that God's one and only voice is silence. Going to that silent place, even music, everything comes out of silence. Silence is the creative force of the universe. If you listen to how you compose music, one great composer that I talked to once said that the silence that the note comes out of is just as important a part of the music as is the note itself. And that the Zen proverb says that the silence between the notes that makes the music. You can't just have all noise. You have to have breaks of when you write music, you'll see the word rest, in there all the time. So you have to have the rest, and all you have to do is go to that silent place. Meditation for me is just a way of making conscious contact with God, because God is that which is indivisible. There's only one force in the universe, and so is silence. You cut everything else in half and have an up-down and a right-wrong and a male-female and a birth-death and all of that. But when you cut silence in half, you just get more silence. Same with God. When you try to divide God, you still just get God. There's no place that God is not, and there's no place that silence is not. It's something that is owned by everybody on the planet. You own silence. It's yours. You can go to it at any moment and connect with your spirit, your source.
I want to thank you so much for being with us today and for doing this interview in the midst of a thunderstorm.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I really appreciate it. There's been some static on the line, but your voice came through loud and clear, as did your message. And you're just doing such wonderful things. And I just encourage you to keep doing it and keep giving that love out, because it's really being felt by millions of us. And I'm just so grateful for this interview.
Well, thank you. God bless you, and keep up your good work as well. You're putting out good energy out over the airwaves. I appreciate it.